If you guys can believe it, it's already been over a year since I took delivery of this 2024 Ioniq 6 SE rear-wheel drive. This is the big battery, smallest wheels, leading to the biggest range number version of the Ioniq 6. When I bought this car, it was rated for 360 miles of estimated EPA range. For the 2025 model year, it did go down to about 340. Still the most efficient version of the Ioniq 6. So in today's video, we're gonna do a deep dive into everything I like, dislike, and just generally what living with this car has been like. So if you guys wanna find out what the Ioniq guy thinks of the Ioniq 6 after a year, then stay tuned. Hey everybody, it's the Ioniq guy. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name's Corbin. I cover all things Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis EV related. Today we're talking Hyundai. So I did take delivery of this car April 14th of 2024, so it's been just over a year. It's been a great experience so far. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna bury the lead. Really love this car. I really like the design. I love the efficiency. I really like this ultimate red color. It's just generally been problem-free. So in terms of total miles put on the car, it's actually kind of pathetic. I know you guys are gonna give me crap, but we just hit 3,500 miles on it today, driving down to Connecticut from Boston for Easter. Traffic was moving pretty slow today. It was bumper to bumper for about probably 30 minutes or so. It's one of those freak warm spring days. It's 80 degrees right now. We averaged 4.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is just excellent. Had I done this drive in my Ioniq 5, it probably would have been closer to probably 3.1. So the efficiency in this car is just fantastic. So over the last roughly 3,500 miles, my overall efficiency has been 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour. Just for reference, my 2022 Ioniq 5, after about 35,000 miles, was, I believe, 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour, maybe 3.1. So I know some of you are gonna be wondering about battery degradation. Now, battery degradation on a car that only has 3,500 miles is gonna be pretty small to begin with, but I did want to test it anyway, so I did just drain the car pretty low and charge it back up to 100%. And what we got was 73.908 kilowatt hours. When I bought the car, I did get a baseline reading last April, and that was 74.416 kilowatt hours. So that means after 1 year and 3,500 miles, there's about 0.7% battery degradation. You can also see here that the battery temps are fairly similar, 70 degrees on the test I did last year and 79 degrees on the test I did yesterday. The reason I mention that is when batteries are colder, they hold less energy, so you really want to have battery packs that are relatively close in temperature. Usually with an EV, you experience most of its battery degradation in the first year, or if you're putting thousands and thousands of miles on it. And then after that, it kind of tapers off a little bit and it's a slower decline down. So yeah, 0.68%. Basically nothing. This car here has only been on one kind of road trip down to Philadelphia. I really haven't put this car through its road tripping paces like I did with the car that we had directly from Hyundai in the i90 Surge with the out of spec team. So I have driven this car, just not this specific car, for close to 6,000 miles or so. And driving a car for 3,000 miles in about 48 hours, you do really get a good sense of how it actually is overall. This summer though, I do plan on doing some bigger road trips with this. I have a family member down in Dallas. I was thinking it might be cool to take 3 days down and 3 days back in the Ioniq 6. I still have my unlimited 2 years of Electrify America charging here. Not that I would go out of my way to specifically only use Electrify America. I would definitely be using some Iona stations and EVgo stations on the way down. But what better way to put a bunch of miles on real quick than doing 2,000 miles each way down to Dallas? So no promises, but something I am considering. So being that it does have only 3,500 miles on it, suffice it to say maintenance has been pretty much minimal, other than checking the air pressure in the tires and adding some windshield washer fluid. The tires still are practically brand new at this point. So let's start back at the beginning. So when I decided to lease this car, the lease deals on it were insane. This was marketed as, I believe, $230 per month. That was before taxes and dealer fees and everything. So all in, I'm paying about $320 per month for this car. Now, just for a point of reference, my new 2025 Ioniq 5 limited all-wheel drive is about $560 with taxes and everything. So almost double what I'm paying for this car, and it's definitely not twice the car that this base Ioniq 6 is. And besides being the cheapest EV to lease from Hyundai at the time, I also just wanted the most efficient, biggest range figure version of the car so I could do some road trips and just see if it really can meet those figures. And I'm sorry to say that I haven't been able to do that yet, but like I said, that will be coming soon. Now, in terms of modifications that I've done to the car, I've really done nothing other than get the side and rear window tinted. I just really like getting my car windows tinted. It just really helps keep the heat out. And it is nice to have a little bit of privacy in your car. These are the legal limit in Massachusetts, so I couldn't go any darker, but it's still plenty for what I like. Now, a modification I would have loved to do is get a trailer hitch for this thing. But here in the United States, the Ioniq 6 isn't rated for towing for whatever reason. Now, I don't know if I would necessarily tow my teardrop trailer with the Ioniq 6. It would have been fun to take it away for a weekend and just see how it does do towing, but mostly for a bike rack is probably what I would have used it for. Outside of the US, this car does come pre-wired for trailer towing lights for a 4-pin connector. Here in the US model, we do not have that, but if you go over to Europe, plenty of people are towing with their Ioniq 6s. It's really unfortunate that they don't give us that option here in the US. Now, in terms of just how the exterior is holding up, it's holding up great. The paint, I love this ultimate red color. Looks really nice. I've got a few boo-boos though. This one right here on the front radar sensor and a little bit on the bumper. Pulled a little too far into my parking spot and hit my bike rack. Having these 18-inch wheels though, with a lot of sidewall, I have not curbed these wheels yet, which I'm very excited about because I think 2 wheels on my 2025 Ioniq 6 now have curb rash. There is a decent boo-boo here on the rear passenger door for the back seat. You can see the damage right there. My fiance did kind of turn the car into a pole in our parking garage. Navigating it can be a little bit difficult, and she kind of clipped one of the bollards. So not sure what we're going to do about it. I think it might be covered by the lease coverage. They allow up to a 4-inch dent and scratch, so it might be kind of on the cusp there, but we're going to see what they say when we turn it in, and if we have to pay for it, I guess we'll just pay for it. Living more in a city now, something I do also really wish that I had here was automatically folding side view mirrors. These are just your standard kind of ones you got to pop in yourself. Do really miss that when I am driving this car because the Ioniq 5 does have those. The car has lived most of its life parked in a garage, so it's not getting tree sap on it. It's not getting any fallout from the atmosphere or anything. So the hood looks really good. The front end doesn't have really too much road damage from rocks and debris and such. I love the lighting on this car so much. I have driven in front of it and behind it, just kind of looking at it when somebody else has been driving it. I think it's just so unique looking. There's really just nothing else on the road that looks like this car. I've only seen maybe 2 or 3 Ioniq 6 in the Boston area. And even though Boston is a pretty EV heavy city, you just don't see them too often. Now, the flashing that you're seeing just has to do with the shutter speed of the camera here, syncing up with that. So that's why you're not seeing the full light bar at once. But it is a really cool touch. Now, one of this car's most kind of divisive styling cues is going to be the double spoiler in the back. Those of you who hate it, rejoice, because for the 2026 mid-cycle refresh, they are getting rid of the upper spoiler and they are just going to keep this kind of duckbill spoiler. I think it might be getting a little bit longer, but this third brake light that runs across the top here is going to be kind of implemented into the glass here, and then this whole thing is just going away. I'm kind of sad about it because I like it, but other than that, I do think the 2026 Ioniq 6 refresh does look quite good. Sales of this car have been pretty mediocre. Some months, the Ioniq 5 sells 5 to 1 Ioniq 6 in the US. I don't know if it's marketing or if people just really don't like the design. It's a shame because it's a great car. Just in terms of how the headlights work, I'm pretty satisfied with them. They're not the best headlights I've ever had in a car, but they're still pretty good. They are LED projection headlamps. Fun fact, in the US, all Ioniq 6s get the same headlights and rear tail lights. unlike with the Ioniq 5 where they really skimp on the front headlights in the lower trims and reserve the good, best looking headlights for the top trim. The door handles here on the Ioniq 6 are also lit in the back, so at night when you do go to get in the car, this whole section is lit, which is really nice. Even the top trim Ioniq 5 doesn't have that here in the US. I've had no issues with these door handles. They've operated perfectly. Now, one issue I did run into in the past year happened right around Christmas time, and the car was here at my mother's house. She was driving it. I kept it here for a few months, and I had issues with the charge port door not opening. I would press this button, it wouldn't shut. I would push this, it wouldn't open. It sounded like the motor was trying to operate, but it just wouldn't. Now, I will give it the benefit of the doubt because it was extremely cold and it had been parked outside. After we got it back to Boston, it never happened again, but nonetheless, it did happen when it was cold and there was a lot of snow outside. So not sure if that was the big problem there, but nonetheless, it was kind of annoying. I actually brought it into my service center for them to take a look at, and of course, when I got it there, it wasn't doing it anymore. Now, while we're here at the charge port, charging with this car has been basically flawless. This car, for most of its life, has been level 1 charged. It was here at my mother's house for about, God, I want to say 4 months maybe, from about August until December when we brought it back up to Boston with us. And she was driving it, putting some miles on it. And she would just top it up here on level 1 because she doesn't have a level 2 charger here. Now that we have this up in Boston with us, it is charged at our apartment complex at about 6 kilowatts. I haven't really charged this after I moved out of my house in Connecticut at 11 kilowatts, so it hasn't really seen the highest level 2 charging speeds, but even when I was charging it at home, I never had issues with the charge port overheating or having D-rated charging. It was always charging at 11 kilowatts. Maybe something I'll revisit over the next year. Something that drives me insane with this car is the ultrasonic front sensors. They are picking up on radar frequencies, I believe, from other cars. It happens a lot with Ford that have rear-facing ultrasonic sensors. And just sitting in traffic today, these things will just go off all the time, even though you're nowhere near hitting the car in front of you. It's extremely frustrating. Hyundai has not seemed to get it fixed. Even the new 2025 Ioniq 5 is having the problem. I'll just completely turn them off because I just don't feel like listening to the beeping and squealing coming from that safety system. Let's go under the hood for a second. So here under the hood of the Ioniq 6, with this car being here at my mom's house in the woods, something definitely moved in. When I came back here in December and popped the hood, there were all sorts of acorns up here and down next to the batteries. I don't think I actually opened up the air filter to check and see if there was anything in there. So while I'm here, let's just do that and take a look and see if the air filter's all disgusting with acorns and whatnot. Here's a lesson in how to check this out. Oh, surprisingly clean. There is some junk in there, but not too much. Probably replace this soon anyway. Now, there were some reports when the Ioniq 6 first went on sale of water getting into this air duct right here. I have not had any problem with that, but it did sound like it was a pretty big problem for a lot of people with mold issues and just getting water into that air blower. So no issues for me. Now, in regard to battery coolant and ICCU coolant, I haven't had to touch this. The level is perfectly fine, no issues there. This doesn't have the secondary low conductivity coolant loop like the 2024 and earlier Ioniq 5. So basically, I think it's at 120,000 miles. You're supposed to get this coolant flushed and refilled. So really no maintenance up until over 100,000 miles with that. Another thing I have not had any issues with is the 12-volt battery, but I do have some concerns. Basically, every time I come out to the car after it's been sitting, the dashboard light indicating that the 12-volt battery is being charged is almost always on. So I am pretty worried that this is probably going to go pretty soon. Actually, I don't know where my 12-volt jump start pack is. I could have sworn I had it in the front here. I don't usually leave home without it just in case. So I'm gonna have to make sure I get that when I get back up to Boston, but luckily no issues on this trip. Now, talking about cargo space here in the Ioniq 6, obviously compared to my Ioniq 5, it's significantly lower, but that has not been a problem for us. Just me and my fiance, we don't have to haul around any strollers or anything. So this is more than sufficient. We throw our groceries in this bag here if we take this to the grocery store. I haven't tried to put a bike or anything in here. Still waiting on a trailer hitch for the 2025 Ioniq 5. That should be here in the next week or two, so I'll get that installed. So we'll probably never try to put a bike in here, but if we did, if we put the seats down, we probably could fit one. Would most likely have to take the front wheel off, but no big deal. You do have your rear seat releases back here. Unfortunately, they don't actually fold down the seats though. These basically just unlatch them, and then you can pull them down. Again, we're not doing that very often, so it's not a big deal, but if you do have to put your seats down often, that is pretty annoying. There is a little bit of underfloor storage. You could take this out and potentially fit some more in there, but I got my tire mobility kit, these blocks right here, Velcro to the trunk floor to keep things in place, and then I've just got some quick detailer in here for times I need to do a quick detail. So that's cargo capacity, no problem for us. Even here on the SE, you have a fully powered trunk, which is also really nice. You guys might not have seen this video. It didn't get a ton of views, but I did do a cargo capacity comparison between the Ioniq 6, the Ioniq 5, and the Kia EV9 3-row all-electric SUV. I used my tires as a gauge in that test, and the Ioniq 6 did not do well, especially compared to the EV9. One tire. That's it, just one tire. With the seats down, we were able to get 3 in the back seat and still just 1 in the trunk. So, 1 full set of tires. That's pretty much it for the exterior of the car. Let's hop inside and talk about some of the stuff on the interior. So before we get in, talking about the interior materials, at least here on the door panel, all hard plastic. Really not a big fan of the door panels in here. Even on the upper trims of the Ioniq 6, still not great. You do get a little bit of a padded area down here, which is nice, but when I rest my arm up on the windowsill, very uncomfortable, really hurts my elbow, but I understand they have to hit a price point. I do really like these sort of see-through, kind of opaque plastic that they use here for your kind of water bottle storage area. This does not hold a very big water bottle, basically just like a disposable plastic one. And then down here on the center console, they use a little bit more of it. You can see I've got my Liner X floor mats in the car. Those will be coming out and getting cleaned pretty soon. In terms of how the seats have held up, they look great. I'm actually really impressed with the fabric seats here. Holding up well. They're not hot or cold when you get into the car. Just generally am a pretty big fan of them. I know a lot of automakers really think that leatherette and fake leather is the best seating surface option for upper trims, but I think there's a place in the world where fabric could be the top trim seating material. I really do see a lot of issues with the side bolsters on the Ioniqs getting worn out pretty prematurely, so the fabric doesn't seem to be suffering from that, even though I'm a big dude and I'm putting a lot of stress on it every time I get in and out of the car. In regard to seat comfort, really great seats. Very supportive, just the right amount of bolstering for me at 6'2", 250-ish pounds-ish. I do actually find this car more comfortable to drive than my Ioniq 5. Just having your legs out, arms kind of stretched out like this, just feels really good. I usually drive at 4 and 6. Just no complaints overall. I'm looking forward to road tripping in this. On the I-90 Surge, I was doing 4-hour shifts every probably 8 hours or so. And yeah, I mean, after 49 hours of continuous driving, I was feeling pretty fatigued, but these seats were pretty comfortable. Something I mentioned on that trip was the lack of seat ventilation. The car started to smell pretty bad with 3 bodies in it after 49 hours of just continuous sitting and eating and God only knows how much farting. Overall though, I can definitely road trip in this car. I do wish that it had 4-way lumbar, but Hyundai just doesn't seem to offer that. Even in the Ioniq 5 Limited, that's not available. So you're basically just stuck with lumbar that's either in or out. Here in the Ioniq 6, in the US, all trims get a heat pump, so no matter rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, you don't have to sacrifice efficient climate control. So that is a really nice feature of the Ioniq 6 that's not seen in the Ioniq 5. The rear-wheel drives do not get a heat pump. Overall, though, I really do like the interior of the Ioniq 6. I really like the lower sedan-style seating position. It does feel kind of different than a normal sedan, though, because you are kind of just sliding into the driver's seat because the battery pack is so thick it's taking up a bunch of floor space. So the entire car is a little bit lifted versus a traditional sedan, so it's easier to get into than like my mom's daily driver, which is a Ford Fusion. So it is nice if you do kind of have back problems, leg problems, getting up from a low seating position. Love the steering wheel here. It's basically the same as the old Ioniq 5, except it has flipped steering wheel controls. This now matches the entire Hyundai lineup, so you can go back and forth between the cars and not have to retrain your brain every time. Something I'm not too keen on, especially since we are kind of sharing this car between me and my fiance, is that your mirror controls are way down here. It's just kind of difficult to lean forward to adjust them, and then you have to sit back and kind of reach forward to adjust it so you can actually see what the mirrors are doing. All around, I really do wish that I kind of went for the upper trim of this car just so that we had memory seats. Here in the base model, that is not available. Something I really do love, though, is the regeneration paddles. You can go between I-pedal, which is full one-pedal driving. You basically just use the accelerator pedal, release your foot off of it, and it will bring the car to a complete stop. Or you can go into level 3, level 2, level 1, or level 0. Level 0 is full coasting. If you hold down the right paddle, that will put you into auto mode. Basically, it will use the car in front of you as well as terrain to adjust the regen level. I'm not a big fan of auto. Some people really love it. I do not like it. It's kind of unpredictable. It doesn't work below certain speeds. So if you forget that it's not operating, you could potentially rear end somebody. Just really not a fan of it, but some people do really love it. Here in the center console, not sure how I feel about it after a year. I still really haven't gotten used to having the window switches here in the center. I often will reach over on the door panel to adjust them, but they are in fact here in the center, so not fully used to that. I hate that the door lock switches are over here. If I need to unlock all the doors, I gotta climb into the driver's seat and press that button. I haven't had any issues accidentally setting the child window lock like I did with the 2022 Ioniq 5. It is pretty much flush with this surrounding material, so it's kind of difficult to engage it. Screens in the car are the same as my old Ioniq 5. I'm pretty indifferent to them at this point. The software works. It's not the best. It's not the quickest. Route planning is pretty good. I will say I did some testing with it late last year, and I'm kind of been turned into a convert of it. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's totally sufficient for most people. You could put anybody in this car, plan a route, and they could definitely get to their destination with all their charging stops and battery conditioning taken care of. That's really the true test of when an EV is really fully baked, is when you can just put somebody in it that's never driven an EV before, and it can get them to a charger, and they can get charging and get to their final destination. Now, I will say this car was promised full over-the-air updates for certain things, and none of that really came to fruition. So all the recalls that this car has had, they've all had to be done at the dealership. Nothing's come over the air. So I feel like the promise of full OTA updatability with this car has not been met. I really don't know what they would be updating at this point because it drives pretty well. I don't really have any issue with the driving dynamics. You do get over-the-air updates for like navigation and the infotainment system, but those are not what they kind of promised. They promised updates for the various computers throughout the vehicle that control charging, the driving dynamics and such. And I did hear from one Hyundai engineer that said the whole problem stems back to the bad 12-volt battery and the fact that one of those OTA updates would not be able to download and install on one charge of that 12-volt battery. They were concerned that it would drain it and then people would have dead cars. Actually, one thing that greatly improved last year with the infotainment system was for seat heater controls. So it used to be that you would have to go into the climate screen and then adjust your seat heaters. Now, say you're in navigation or something, you press the seat temperature button. It brings up this little screen. You can adjust them, hit OK, and then it brings you right back to where you were. You don't have to go back out to the main home screen and then back into what you were doing. Just all around big improvement. Another modification I did, basically the only other, was I did add this Best EV Mod padded armrest to the armrest here. It does add a good amount of cushion, makes it a little bit more comfortable. Fits really well, super easy to install. I did do a video on just this alone. I'll have that linked in the description. And then here are some of my products for the Ioniq 6. You can see the sunglass holder as well as cup holder enlarger. Besides that, I have the automatic door locking device on my website as well. I really do hate the fact that the only USB port for Android Auto is USB-A, not USB-C. That will be fixed in the 2026 mid-cycle refresh. I will say the choice of using silver plastic around the screen bezel was kind of bad. It does reflect up onto the windshield. It's not going to be picked up by the camera very well, but it's pretty annoying. Some people I know have wrapped this in electrical tape or like gaffer tape just to kind of dull the reflection, and that does help. But it is there and it is pretty annoying. I do really wish that on the SE trim they did offer a different color interior. The black interior here, very oppressive. Not a big fan of all black interiors. I'm willing to sacrifice that for a cheap lease payment, but if I were to, say, buy this car for a long time, I would not buy an all black interior. It's just too dark, too depressing, not for me. Now, one of my biggest gripes with this car is the fact that I can't use my Comma 3X with it. Those of you who don't know what it is, basically all it is a add-on driver assistance system that allows you to drive with your hands off the wheel. It maintains lane centering much better than the stock system. But here on the SE rear wheel drive, it's not supported yet. Not enough people have bought this car that developers have wanted to take the time to adapt Highway Drive Assist 1, which is what this car has, to work with the Comma 3X, versus HDA 2, which is in the upper trims, the SEL and Limited trims of the Ioniq 6. And those all work with it. So pretty bummed that I don't have it in here. Had I known that, I probably would have gotten an SEL. I really love the Comma 3X that much. Now, in regard to the glove box, I don't really use it. I don't go in here pretty much at all. So not much to say about it. It's a glove box. Another thing I really truly hate is the fact that you don't have a automatically dimming rear view mirror. It was kind of a running joke in the I-90 Surge. We came in third place, and we don't have a automatic darkening rear view mirror. For a car in the mid $40,000 range, totally unacceptable in 2025, in my opinion. You can see the steering wheel material has held up quite well over the last year. No scrapes or anything. It doesn't look like it's wearing out prematurely or anything. Just aging pretty well. So the climate control system has been rock solid. That heat pump working really well. Blows really cold really quickly, really hot really quickly. It does utilize the PTC resistive heater when you first power on the car when it's cold out. That really warms up the interior quickly. And then it switches over to the heat pump as that kind of spools up. Unfortunately, no wireless charging pad here in the SE trim. I did consider making my own, but it would have to plug in to this USB port, and this is what's used for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So I didn't want to do that and then just basically remove that feature from the car. Windshield wipers, no complaints other than the fact that the stock windshield wipers that come from the factory are abysmal, so I did change those out. I think I put Bosch icons on here. I do use Rain-X Silicone Advantage on the Ioniq 5. Those are also really good and would probably fit the Ioniq 6. Kind of going along with the dark interior is the fact that on the SE trim here, there is no ambient interior lighting at all. And at nighttime, this is just a total black void. There's really nothing leading any interesting color to the interior here, which is why down there in the 12-volt cigarette outlet, I did install one little USB LED light. That does add a little bit of light down here, but nonetheless, still not much. I do wish that even here on the base trim, we did have a little bit, just a little bit of ambient lighting. The safety systems in here work great, besides what I already mentioned with the front ultrasonic sensors, automatic emergency braking, lane keeping assist, lane centering, adaptive cruise control. It all works flawlessly. I used highway drive assist in bumper-to-bumper traffic for a half hour on the Mass Pike today. You can basically fully take your hands off the steering wheel. It won't yell at you at those slow speeds very often, and you can just kind of sit back, make sure it's doing its thing, and traffic actually doesn't become too much of a chore at that point. Now, in terms of the stereo, I'll put on some Sounds of Nature. Best thing to ever happen to the Ioniq lineup. It's adequate. Like my old Ioniq 5, it's perfectly fine for listening to podcasts and just listening to some music. If you're an audiophile, you're going to probably hate it. It's not great. Here in the Ioniq 6, it's only a 6-speaker system. Just not a lot of depth to anything. There's no subwoofer, so you really get no bass. If you do really care about audio, you're going to want to go for the upper trim, and even then, it's still a pretty mediocre system. Some folks do seem convinced that the latest over-the-air software update that came out a couple weeks ago did improve the sound. I personally haven't paid enough attention to try and decipher if it did or not, and I don't exactly remember what it sounded like before the update, so I'm just not going to comment. Now, when you do turn off the HVAC and your Sounds of Nature, it's a really peaceful environment in here. Super quiet. It's almost tomb-like. The double laminated windows and all the sound deadening in this car really just make it a very quiet place to be. I think part of the reason why it's also super quiet in here is the fact that there is no sunroof, so that's not letting in any sound like in the upper trim. So I think the SE is probably the quietest version of the Ioniq 6. Let's hop in the back seat. You can see just how easy it is for even a taller person to get in and out of this back seat, and you can see I've got a ton of knee space. Huge back seat. This is really a step above a mid-size sedan, I would say, in terms of rear seat space, just because the car is such a long wheelbase at about 3 meters. I've got at least 4 inches behind myself. On the i90 Surge, I would just kind of sit back here, spread out like this, kind of rest my head on the C-pillar, and just take a little bit of a nap. Now, something that did actually really suck on the i90 Surge and spending a lot of time in the back seat was these armrests back here. They are awful for a long drive. Just hard plastic here, hard plastic here. Everything's hard. You've got no place soft to put your arm. I would put a pillow on here most of the time just to try and relieve some of that pain from my arm. It is what it is. Even in the upper trims, still backseat comfort, just really not great in terms of door panel material. So hopefully that can get remedied in the mid-cycle refresh. But you do have the double laminated back glass as well, so it's quiet in the back seat too. I was also really glad in the i90 Surge that the armrest back here existed, because in the base Ioniq 5 for 2024 had the armrest removed. So if you bought a low trim, your rear seat passengers had no place to rest their arm. It is soft fabric and is padded, so that definitely helped relieve some of the stress and fatigue from being trapped back here for 49 hours. Something else that was really nice was having 2 USB-C ports for charging up my earbuds, my phone, and then having access to fresh air in the back seat was also a very nice plus, because oftentimes in the base models, you don't get these niceties in the back seat. Now, headroom in the back seat, not fantastic. Again, 6'2". If I do rest my head all the way back, my forehead is basically on the headliner. If I do sit with my head forward, I can get my fingers between my head and the roof, but that's about it. So that's kind of lacking. Now, when we did leave on the i90 Surge, I didn't check the fade and the balance of the stereo system, but backseat audio was pretty awful. I mean, I could hear that in the front seat. It was pretty loud and easy to hear, but for me in the back seat, I almost could not hear anything that was being played, which kind of sucked. I didn't ask them to fiddle with it or anything, but it sounds like these back speakers were pretty weak and are pretty weak. Something that you think wouldn't actually make that big of a difference is these little corner windows in the back area. They actually do let in a decent amount of light, and they do make it feel a lot less claustrophobic back here, so I'm really glad that they do have them. Well, I think that's pretty much it for the back seat and pretty much it for this car, so let's get out and I'll give you a wrap up. So that's going to do it for this 1-year review of the Hyundai Ioniq 6. This is going to be the last model year of this design. The 2026 is going to be going on sale later this year, most likely. Whether it's going to be built in the US or not, we still don't know. But all around, if you want cheap, reliable, efficient transportation, you really can't beat the Ioniq 6. If you guys didn't see the i90 Surge, definitely check that out on Out of Spec Motoring. If you don't want to watch all like 12 hours of it, spoiler, we came in 3rd place out of, I believe, 10 cars. We were only 15 minutes behind the refreshed Tesla Model 3, which really sucked because there were a few things we could have done differently that would have allowed us to beat the Tesla Model 3 and get 2nd place, but we still finished on the podium with bronze, and that was good enough for me. So anyway, guys, if you are interested in getting an Ioniq 6 and you have some questions that I didn't answer in this video, leave them down in the comment section. Maybe I'll do a separate video on that. But overall, been a great experience so far. It's going to be kind of sad to turn this one in next April, but that does mean that I will get to test something new out. So anyway, guys, if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Consider becoming a channel member for as little as 99 cents per month. For $3 per month, you can gain early access to all of these videos, as well as a 5% discount to my store at ioniqguy.com for some of the accessories that I showed you. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.